Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. As a reminder, the thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, we love seeing you live on Facebook, YouTube, all those places. It's always a lot of fun. The chats are fun. We can't get to every one of them. We do read them, though. But just keep in mind your chats may show up on the show. And if you can't catch us live, catch us in the replay or in your favorite podcasting app. You know me. My name is John Ruark. I'm a past master of the Patriot Lodge, number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. Next up, Joe Martinez. Worshipful, how are you doing this evening?
Hello. Well, I'm home, which is always great. Better than being in the car.
You made it.
Another place. I did. Joe Martinez, past and current. Master of Manassas Lodge, number 182 in Manassas, Virginia. Member of Things and Stuff. And as always, damn glad to be here.
Life Master in Perpetuity. Oh, some good stuff. Next up, Jason Richards. Hello and good evening.
Hello, Jason Richards here, past master of Vacation Lodge number 16 in Clifton, Virginia. Also a member of Lafayette number 79 in Zanesville, Ohio.
Excellent, excellent. And joining us for our special guest tonight, Brother Michael Paul, who you may remember from almost 10 years ago. We were talking about this in the green room, the New Orleans Masonry episode. So it's super awesome to have you back on the show again. How are you doing, Brother Michael?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Happy to be here. Happy to be here. Better be seen than viewed. Isn't that what they say? Any other titles you wish to share with the brethren and the viewers?
I'm a semi-retired publisher, owner of Cornerstone Book Publishers, and this year I will be a 50-year Mason. So,
whoa!
Wow,
Congrats.
Congratulations! Awesome. That's a big deal.
So you must amazed I survived this long.
Yeah, you joined when you were 10. Like, what's the rule there?
I wasn't born yet.
Okay. You got bonus points.
Yes.
Love it. Love it. Love it.
Another 15 years and you can witness the death of Freemasonry.
Well, maybe not.
I hope not. Awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, it's great having you back. We'll get to the topic in a minute. But first, I want to give a special shout out and thanks to the patrons who support the show. You guys are amazing. And if you want to support the show, head over to patreon.com/the Masonic Roundtable. So, thank you in advance. And thank you to all of you who've already given a little bit of your love and time and effort and energy and love and support.
And money.
And yes.
And love.
It makes Joe happy.
It does.
And lovely money.
Yeah.
Which all goes back to the show. 100%.
Yep.
Okay, well, after our special shout outs and thank yous, we always go to the tarot card of the week, which is always a good segment to segue into.
Tarot card of the week.
It's really the music that makes it. It really is.
Good God. Whoever recorded that.
At this point, our lovely guest is wondering what in the world he signed up for.
The hell is going on here? Yes. All
so
right.
for the topic of religious Masonic rituals, what are we working with tonight, Brother Joe?
Hello. Yes, I'm gonna do it, even though I hate that song. We're gonna grab one of my favorites, the Masonic Tarot. Who was, we've seen this one a couple times. Who the artist who designed them and did all the work was someone named Patricio Silva, who was from Chile. Not a Mason though. So he just studied symbology and loved Masonic symbols and loved doing things with them and made a beautiful tarot deck. So we're gonna shuffle them up. And I think we've had this deck on quite a few times actually.
I don't know why.
You really need to diversify your tarot deck holdings.
What are you talking about? That's all tarot decks.
Yeah, I know. It's amateur hour.
Okay, well, I'll get more.
Don't challenge Jason on who has the bigger deck.
Send messages to the wife. You all know who she is. All right. So
No, we all know RJ. RJ has the most.
All
Ooh,
right.
2 of
two,
cups.
two of
Two
chalices.
chalices.
Yes, chalices in the Masonic Tarot. So yeah, 2 of cups.
That's
So
always a popular card, or at least a positive card of energy, right?
Bonds, strong bonds,
Yes, friendship,
friendship,
joint
we're friends.
partnership, right? It has, anytime you see 2, especially with characters in there, right? They're usually working together as opposed to being pulled apart by the devil. But hey, 2 of cups. It's a good one. It's good emotional connection too, right? The cups being water and emotions. So yeah, good friendship. Share a glass, share a pint.
You had me looking at it again. Okay, so these are all filled with wine. They're not filled with water, which is kind of weird.
Ooh,
Yeah, they're wine filled.
which would
So
be great.
they're Table Lodge tarot cards.
Or they're chalices.
They're
Like,
chalices
yes.
for religious rituals, maybe,
Ooh.
Oh, interesting.
especially for Maundy Thursday, right?
It's true.
Look at that. It all comes together. That's why I
Boom.
like this. Yep. Thank you for the happy Passover and Easter to all that celebrate. Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, that is a great segue into why we chose this week's episode. I was inspired by, because if you haven't subscribed to Brother Paul's channel, you should certainly look that up. I'm sure we'll get a link here posted soon. Because I came across one of his little educational segments that he does, as I always love to enjoy. And he did one, was it Sunday? I mean, it was just like less than a week ago.
Yes.
On the Scottish Rite Maundy Thursday service. I said, this is fascinating. One, I'd never heard of it before. So, of course, I had to bring his big brain over here. But that got me thinking about, well, what are some of these other religious or religious-like experiences that kind of bleed over into Masonry? How do we feel about those? What is it? What kind of conversations come up when we start thinking about these types of rituals? Some that were still going on, in our lifetimes, of things that have bled over from purely religious connotations into what we try to keep as a secular order, of Freemasonry. So let's chat, because Brother Paul, let's start with the Maundy Thursday service, since it is Maundy Thursday. Tell me where you heard about this, found this, practiced this. Like, this is fascinating to me.
Well, this was a yearly thing. I joined Scottish Rite New Orleans in the late 70s. And actually, it was part of the ceremonies for the entire Southern jurisdiction. But in tracing it back, it looks like it was found in New Orleans by Albert Pike while he was there. He was commander-in-chief of the Grand Consistory of Louisiana. And he took that with him to DC when he became Grand Commander, and they brought it into the Southern jurisdiction and made it a yearly practice. And why is a very interesting story. But along with the Maundy Thursday service ceremony, he brought the KCCH and the Grand Cross, which was both one ceremony, and he divided them and recreated from, it was called a ceremony of the fiery heart. But there was a whole series of these ceremonies, which were really initiations. And that was the key behind everything. It was, each one of them was a type of initiation. And the goal was to make the individual realize that there's something more than just a day-to-day life. In the Maundy Thursday ceremony, it was sharing. They would share a drink and a little piece of bread, and it was to teach that we're all in this together and that we should help each other and make sure that everyone is provided for. And that was the basis of the Maundy Thursday ceremony. And it went back a lot earlier than certainly Freemasonry, and a lot earlier than Christianity. It was all these ceremonies were taken from who knows when, far back. And it all brought together. We still see like a circular event where they become popular and then they lose popularity and they become popular. And it becomes a fascinating ride, to be honest.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, because some of these, again, a lot of even what probably most people would consider Christian rite ceremonies, just out, in the non-Masonic world, some of those things existed even previous to established Christianity, right? These were ceremonies and rites that were performed either by other religious organizations or, definitely not in a Christian context.
Now, I'll mention something. When we talk about these old New Orleans ceremonies, the term Christian, today Christianity encompasses a number of different faiths, but in the very early times of when these were created, Christianity meant Roman Catholic in New Orleans.
Okay,
And
so not Catholic with the lowercase c, but an actual capital C.
Well, capital C, lowercase c was who they intended it for. And that's the catch. But it was New Orleans had a number of these types of ceremonies: the baptism ceremony, the Maundy Thursday. There was numerous ceremonies, and there was organizations that had nothing to do with Freemasonry that were also part of this. But the idea was that the Roman Catholic Church was a religion of initiation, and whether it's a baptism, marriage, or last rites, all of these ceremonies are intended or thought to be intended to be initiation ceremonies designed to reach in for the soul to expand a little more. So that's just technicalities, because the Protestant faiths do not really have the same type of initiation ceremonies. There was a breakaway from them, and we can discuss why for a million years and probably still not get it complete. But that was a little bit what was behind it.
I saw you chewing on that, Joe. What came to mind when you were
Brother Paul is he brings up something really important, and don't want to delve too far into denominations and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, what you were talking about, Brother Paul, were sacramental things, and as someone who grew up Roman Catholic and it was just bombarded with it, I lived it from the time I was born till the end of high school. And everything was wrapped around sacraments, and sacraments were very important. I find it interesting. You bring them all up as saying they were all had some sort of initiation aspect to them. And I was wondering if you could pull that thread a little bit, because you piqued my curiosity.
Well, let me give you one bit to step on a little more about why I say this. Grand Lodge, Louisiana, met in the Masonic Temple building in New Orleans until the 1990s or so, somewhere around then, and then they moved out. Well, a lot of the lodges, they just moved to other locations, but the lodge rooms were still there, and a hotel bought it. Well, the guy who was a chief engineer at the hotel, he calls up one of the guys at the Grand Lodge, and then they ended up contacting me because they were doing some electrical work in one of the lodges, and they cut a hole in the wall to get to where they were going, and there was something wedged up in the wall, sealed up in the wall, and they brought it out and they said, "What is this?" Turns out it was a Jesuit communion press from the late 1800s. And the question was,
sealed up in a Masonic lodge
room. And the question became, why? No records, no anything. There's nothing been found. But what it was one of these. I saw a couple of weeks ago. It brought to mind what happened. One of the convents in New Orleans, they found an old Jesuit press, and what it was if you think of these, I don't know if you all had that, but my mom used to make sandwiches, grilled cheese sandwiches in this press, and you put it in the fire and heat up. Well, that's what they would do. And it would make these little wafers for communion. And it had the insignia for the Jesuits on it. And what in New Orleans Masonry, there was a lot of talk of the Jacobite Masonry, and that was the Catholic Masonry. And there's arguments both sides, and there's a lot that still needs to be discovered. But last year I published or republished William Wilmhurst's Masonic Initiation. And it was published 100 years ago last year, 1924. And it talks about initiation and going through cycles. And if you think about when you talk about this Maundy Thursday or this Masonic baptism, all of these were done in the early 1800s. Wilmhurst talks about in his Masonic initiation, which was the 1920s, about how there's a great change taking place, and that they were for too long, Masonry was just a club, and there's a change. But each time there was something that happened with the early 1800s, came the mid 1800s, Civil War. The country was struck. With Wilmhurst, he thought everything was getting ready to happen, and we had the Great Depression and World War II. And for so long, I know in the last 20 years, everyone is talking how Masonry's become a club. But wait, we're getting a little better. And I think each one of these things is designed, and I'm going stray into, la la land, really, maybe. But each one of these things is to teach us and give us an opportunity. You can go this way, you can go this way, which way you could go. And I think that's where we are right now. And I believe that's why these ceremonies, I know I tried to redo and reactivate the Masonic baptism in about 20 years ago. And it was no, because it's too much like a religion. And they didn't want to give the appearance of Masonry being a religion. And there was a thought that if you are religious, then that makes you a religion. And it's not true.
Yeah.
But
I mean, like, heaven forbid we have, a Bible and an altar, and yeah.
That's it. That's the problem.
That would be too crazy.
Or flat out say Masonry is not a religion, but it is inherently religious.
Of course.
In our public ceremonies in Virginia.
Yep.
But this is the problem we've faced for so long. And each one of these ceremonies that we can dig up and find and say, oh, wait, what is this? What is this? If you dig into it and you look at it, it's designed to teach you, become better, make yourself better, follow this path, and this is going to be good.
Yeah.
And
who could be against that?
You could do it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's come back to the Maundy Thursday ceremony. So it was a Scottish Rite ceremony, and was it just limited to certain people in the Scottish Rite, or was it open for all?
No,
I think you said it was mandatory, right?
It was mandatory. If you remember the Scottish Rite, you went to it. It was clearly presented that it's not any particular denomination.
Okay.
The goal was to teach, to share, to help, to take care of each other. Mm-hmm. And that was the intended goal. And it's unfortunate. It's like baptism. The baptism ceremony, baptism goes back, who knows how far back, way before religions that we have. Mm-hmm. And all of these ceremonies are all designed to teach, you take this. And the Maundy Thursday ceremony, what they'd do is they'd go around, they'd pass a loaf of bread, you break off a piece, each one would take that and they'd have a little ritual, and they'd drink a little wine from a cup, and it was designed to help each other. A simple, basic human need. But unfortunately,
Sounds
there was
very Eucharisty.
yeah, yeah. But it was presented as we're not elevating any particular faith above another.
And that's I love that point, because like that's going to be the running, line through the show, because there's some things that are explicitly items, ceremonies, words that are used in religious context that that you'll see in some Masonic ceremonies, that it's like, well, depends on how you look at it, right? And it could offend, but everyone that I've seen is much more of a, hey, let's just take this as a symbol of this lesson, this moral lesson that we're taking away from this, and yeah, go from there. Joe?
Yeah, no, everything you and Brother Paul said, I totally dig. And it's funny, and again, we don't want to focus on one particular religion because that's not the point of the show. But I can say in my 40 something years of life, I've been to many places of worship, many different denominations, different faiths altogether, in different parts of the world. And what struck me as interesting is you were basically talking about something very communion-like, right? No matter how you characterize the importance of it. But what I find interesting is, like, even within, lower C Christian, you get different expressions of that. Like, I've been to, I grew up Catholic. So, when it was time to receive Eucharist, you had to do certain things before you could do that. There was preparation for that ceremony. You had to go to confession and things like that. But then you go to other churches, and I've been to churches where it's like, hey, we have an open table, so you don't even have to be Christian. We just want you to come up and partake with us and
Right.
do all that stuff. So there's this whole gamut of how people place different import in that ceremony, which is kind of universal. And then going to what Brother Mike said, where it's like, well, this is just to teach us that we're all together and we're breaking bread together and we're sharing an experience together. So I just find it interesting that there's so many different ways to look at the same act of taking a piece of bread and giving it to somebody else,
Well, and it goes back to this idea of, the energy you put into something is, paid back to you in kind. And that is just a deeply esoteric way of saying you get out of it what you put into it.
Good thing I've never heard that in Masonry.
No, never.
There's we can look at both sides of the spectrum. You could say religion is good, but there's symbols, and the symbol of communion, we can turn the opposite direction and look at, say, something like the swastika. That was a good symbol, but it became overshadowed when it was used improperly and perverted into something that was not originally.
Yeah. Exactly.
So baptism and communion, it predates what we have as religions, but it becomes what it is known for. So when you see the sharing bread, you say, well, that's Christian communion. That's something that's Catholic too. But it's you got to look deeper.
So when did they stop doing the Maundy?
It was somewhere in the, I'd have to double check, somewhere in the late 90s, I believe. Because I remember you had to go, or you had to give an excuse why you couldn't go.
Wow.
And that was the Maundy Thursday ceremony, and it was always something that was required for a long time in the Southern jurisdiction. I can't speak for other jurisdictions. I'm not quite sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, just to transition, right? You said it a couple times. I did find a copy of the ceremony of baptism in the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite. So this came from, let's see, the book of the Ancient and Accepted Scottish Rite of Freemasonry. This is an 1868 publication by Charles Thompson McClenachan. And yes, there it is. It goes into detail about that. You have to be a child of a Mason, or and then if the father can't be there, then you can, ready for this, have a past master act as the father. So could you imagine picking a grumpy past master to perform a child's Masonic baptism service? And it's very prescriptive. But fascinating to read. And this has been going on for a while too, right, Brother Michael?
It did, and if to be honest, in religious ceremonies, a baptism has a quality of salvation. You see, you're baptized. That means you're saved. You've been baptized. But the Masonic baptism goes with the older ceremony. It's just that it puts the lodge responsible that they are going to take care of this child until they get adulthood, and they'll provide for it if needed. So it has nothing whatsoever to do with salvation or anything like that. It's taking the Christian term of baptism for what it meant, and it's in the ritual itself. It's not a salvation tool.
Yeah, it's like a group or community kind of affirming the relationship, and the baptism is almost like the community kind of covering
Right.
a layer of protection over that individual.
Right. But because it had the word baptism, too many heard it and said, "Ha ha ha! You're a religion." So,
so as far as you know, it's not being performed anymore either.
I don't know of any place that is performing it. It was practiced in the Grand Lodge of Louisiana until the 1940s, 1950s.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is like almost 100-year-old ceremony, right? So it's not like it just showed up, right?
No, it's older than that. It was the early 1800s. It's a couple of 100 years old. So it's
right. And then all of a sudden, we just had this fear of the anti-masonry movement that says, hey, maybe we should probably not do anything that's semi-religious, quasi-religious.
Well,
just
in the
case.
1990s,
we probably shouldn't try to kill people who expose our secrets either.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Brother Paul.
It was the 1990s. They had a very large anti-Masonic movement, and they were going into Grand Lodges, throwing over tables. Libraries were destroyed. It was a bad thing. So I think a lot of Grand Lodges got a little hesitant, and they didn't want to do anything that came anywhere clear or near what a religion might be.
So let's assume noble intent, right? Then let's assume that this thing had been established. It was done for all the right reasons. It was clearly delineating itself from religion. But then
all the right reasons, RITE.
All the right reasons. Dad jokes. I love it. But then yet, if you don't, I keep going back to like the catchphrase, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And it just, it kind of tells me that either the Grand Lodges weren't ready to stand up for this ceremony, for example, that says, hey, no, like this is something that's special to us. This is why we do it. But instead chose the weaker thing to just say, okay, we'll back down and we'll just stop doing it. Is that a fair assumption? I mean, it just seems kind of a sellout, just to be frank.
Well, that goes back to Wilmhurst. He talks about the late 1800s, early 1900s, how Grand Lodges brought people in just who were there and they became a club, and they didn't study ritual. They didn't do anything. They just came. Doesn't that sound like has so many plagued Masonry for so many years now?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. And this is one of the reasons too many got into office who didn't understand what initiation meant or the different forms of initiation. And when we have this, then, baptism, well, maybe they're right. Maybe this is something that we shouldn't be fooling with. I don't know why they did it, but maybe they shouldn't be doing it. So it was put aside because they didn't know. And when you chip away at something, if a great restaurant starts taking away all their top dishes, then they ended up being just like, Yeah,
that reminds me. I went to a lecture once, maybe a decade ago, with S. Brett Morris, and he was talking about I think the rectified Scottish Rite, and the word rectify, right? They're there to fix something, and he describes it as the people who were put in charge of fixing the Scottish Rite ritual weren't necessarily the most knowledgeable in why some of that were there, but yet their job was to fix it. So they fixed stuff, not knowing what they cut out and left, on the threshing room floor. They took away some parts of the ceremony that were very meaningful, esoteric, whatever you want to call it. And so it's just so funny that you say that, because
Yeah, well, they changed
unfortunately
it.
it happens. Yeah,
They were
changed.
charged with changing it, so they changed it.
Exactly. I'm doing my job. Yeah.
But it's a strange time we're in right now.
Mm-hmm. And then let's see. There's I have a couple other examples of semi-religious Masonic rituals, but I don't know if there's any that come to mind for you other three. I was going to open up the floor there of anything that you found interesting. Go ahead, Joe.
No, all I was going to say was, and these are a little out of at least our scope. I can't speak for Brother Michael. Masonic jurisdictions that are just full on religious in nature, like the Swedish Rite, for example. I mean, that is just overtly.
That's explicitly. Yeah.
You literally have to be a Trinitarian Christian to join. And there's other countries that have very religious overtones in their Freemasonry as well. So, I mean, but Swedish Rite was the first thing that popped into my head.
Right. And I mean, that's still well established today. That is kind of the only way that it's done in Sweden, right? So you must be a Christian. I don't know if it's a Trinitarian Christian or not. I don't remember. But you must be a professing Christian in order to join Freemasonry there. And then they have their own 10 degree system, I believe, that they go through. Fascinating. We did do an episode on that, so go back and search the archives for the Swedish Rite. The other one that I actually had to stop and think about as I was going through it was what's the Joe, you'll know more quicker than I will, the past high priest ceremony?
The anointed high priest ceremony?
The anointed high priest ceremony, right? Because spoiler alert, you get anointed with oil, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is getting a little weird, because I'm definitely not a high priest in the Jewish religious sense.
And there's definitely one of those things that Brother Michael was talking about when we were talking about where we're talking about like the Maundy Thursday ceremonies. There's something there that happens there as well. But yeah, there's an anointing, and then there's also a sharing of things as well.
Exactly. And so that's when I started to feel a little uncomfortable, like I'm gonna keep going with this, but is this legit? Like, and
well, that was the most excellent master degree for me back when I went through it, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
I was like, huh?
Yeah.
Y'all are doing what? Yeah.
So that's where it starts to, where the line is there. And if you don't, I guess it's multifaceted, right? If it's not clear on what the intent is, if you're not clear on what the intent is, and then if it's not being performed with the intent, right, then you have to really balance those three parts of the equation, I think.
Well, that goes back to, I was going to just tie in Brother Michael there. I mean, that's literally what he said that people were complaining about 100 years ago, right? That's what Wilmshurst was complaining about, that, people weren't getting that experience. And, Wilmshurst was talking about all the parties and all the dances and every other darn thing that Masons were going to, except having deep Masonic initiatic experiences, Sorry, Brother Michael.
No, it's the idea of initiation is not that what's going to happen, but it's that you're coming to it of your own free will. And that's why the asking was nobody asked, because you have to have the internal desire to be initiated. The lodge or group, whatever, has to have the desire to initiate, and there has to be the proper setting. And each one of them, the proper setting can be just being open and being ready, because once the door opens, if you just stand there, that's where they come up with the term dweller on the threshold. It's you're there, but you're not going into the next room. And you it's not that you know what's in the next room, it's that you're willing to find out and you're willing to grow and take the next step. And this is one of the keys of initiation, that you have to say, yes, I want to do this, and go ahead and take the steps and learn what's going on. By the same turn, there's got to be somebody on the other side that's ready to teach you. And if you're ready and you're ready to learn and you take the next step and there's nobody there to teach you, what happens? That's where the problems come. And it seems like we're fast reaching the point where you have to decide, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And if there's a lodge,
how do you want your masonry? Mm-hmm.
Right. What do you want out of it? And you got to be able to say, yeah, this is what I want, or no, this is not what I want. And you got to do it. You got to take a position.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I agree with you. We're at an inflection point that we need to, shape the masonry that we want now. Because we may have 15 years left, right? So we need to make sure that we're picking and choosing the things that are valuable to us, and more especially how we want to shape the future of the fraternity. I want to go back to this religious versus religion concept. So anyone want to take a stab at like defining, the difference between religion versus religious?
So I would say that religion has a connotation of being, salvatory, or has this connotation of salvation that Brother Paul was talking about earlier. And I think being religious is more along the lines of something that involves a relationship with the divine, but does not necessarily have that salvation link to it.
Agreed.
There you go. Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me. It's okay.
I wouldn't if I didn't.
Paul spoke. I'm not adding anything to that because he agreed, and that's the end of it for me. So everything he said.
So then why do we, in our Masonic ritual, emphasize the difference, about how Masonry is inherently religious, but not a religion?
Because it doesn't practice any form of salvation, doesn't offer salvation as one of its rewards or goals. You want salvation, go find it from your religion.
Now, I was told if I paid lots and lots of dues that I would get into heaven. That's what I was told when I was joining.
They lied to you.
Grandmaster Joel Austin.
The Grandmaster Joel Austin.
In his 5 jet? Yes.
Oh my goodness.
Well,
Brother Jose.
I think that's important. Oh yeah, Jose, that's a great.
Let's see. So religion could be an explicit dogma requirements, whereas religious can have elements that are reverential, but could also be ecumenical.
And I think the key here is religious organizations leaving salvation up to the individual, as opposed to a religion, purporting to offer salvation, if you follow these particular guidelines. And that's a very Christian-centric view, because I know, salvation kind of, differs in other faith systems.
Well, there's a thought that initiation, if it opens a door, then what you need to do to open that door and what you need to walk through that door is part of the process of growing. And it involves an initiation is like an opening up or an invitation. And what you can do with it is up to you. And it depends on what your goals or what your intent is. And that's always individual. That's why we hear so many times that Masonry is meant to make the individual better. It's not to make you don't join Masonry to make the other guy better. You join to make yourself better. And I think that's an important part, because if you're actually growing step by step, then you're going to be experiencing different things, and you're going to be changing your opinion on things. You say, well, I used to think this, but I'm thinking this now. I want to do this. Maybe being better is I want to have a better diet, or I want to be more generous with people. I want to recognize that the other guy counts too. It's not just all me. It's everyone. And I think that this is all part of each one of these ceremonies, that religious ceremonies. They're religious by definition, but they're all part of a basic preparing what's inside you that makes you special for maybe the next life, whatever comes next.
Mm-hmm.
This is, and there's lots of thoughts on that, and different religions have definitions of, you do this, or you could spend eternity burning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what do you accept, and what you are ready to tie your wagon to.
Yeah. So
Well,
go ahead, Jeff.
sorry. I was just going to say, I think you bring up a really good point, and I think this idea of Freemasonry lends itself to having that open mind, right? It's kind of hard, and I'm not going to say it happens in every lodge, because I've been to very, very, very closed-minded places where Masonry is practiced, and we'll leave it at that. But the concept and the things that you learn when you go through the 3 degrees kind of forces you to have an open mind about things. It's like, oh, I should have an open mind about this. Or I'm sitting in a room with people of all different faiths, beliefs, and different walks of life, and I'm being exposed to things that I never was exposed to growing up, or where I live, or what have you. So it kind of lends itself really nicely to having an open mind. Now, that's up to you whether you want to keep that mind open or just be closed-minded and say, my way is the right way. But it's not going to get you very far in Freemasonry. But I think that's an excellent point.
So I was going to offer up a contradictory viewpoint. So let's play devil's advocate. What about the optics, right? If more of the public knew about our religious, from everything simple, something as simple, and you'll still see this today on anti-masonic videos. Oh, hey, all these different people are praying to the same God, and they're in different faiths. Like, how dare they? Because you're only supposed to pray to your God, right? Well, how can you be even in the room praying to, with someone of another faith, or even another, dare we say, denomination, right? But if we can't even agree that praying to something above ourselves, right, is taboo, when you add Masonic baptisms, Masonic marriage ceremonies, Maundy Thursday ceremonies, should we just kind of step back? I already know what we're all going to say here, but playing devil's advocate, are we towing the line a little too much? Are we dancing on that edge?
Why should we give a shit? And walk that back ever so slightly, in the sense that, if someone is a member of a faith system that believes vehemently in the inherent superiority of that faith system, whose sole mission is to convert everyone of other faith systems into that superior faith system, that is the kind of person who shouldn't be in this organization.
That's interesting.
Well, I tell you, about 30, 35 years ago, I moved into a new area, new house, and I was in New Orleans, and I was working in downtown New Orleans, and the bus was right there. It's a lot easier to take the bus right down than try to find a place to park. And in the evening, I'd come home and I'd walk down the street to my house, and there was always this guy sitting out in a lawn chair reading a Bible. Oh, that's nice. And I'd wave to him, "Hi, how you doing?" Well, finally one day he started talking to me, and I walked over to him, and he was talking, and all of a sudden he looks at my hand, and he sees my Masonic ring. He says, Freemasonry satanic. I said, no, it's not. He says, no. I have proof. Freemasonry is satanic. I said, it's not. And I dismissed him. I was tired. I want to go eat. So I went home. Well, every day that I passed by, he says, let me show you my proof. He says, I have proof that Freemasonry is satanic. Well, one day he caught me in the right mood. And so I stopped and I said, okay, let me see your proof. So he runs inside and he comes back with a big suitcase, and it's filled with photocopies of newspaper clippings and copies of books and all kind. And I said, well, I can't look at this right now. I think it was a Friday, because I told him, I said, let me look over at the weekend and I'll bring it back to you. So I brought it home and I started looking through it, and the entire collection was photocopies of book. Now I had a library by that time with a number of books, and a lot of the books that he quoted from, there were sentences and little clippings. And I checked the sources, and invariably they were either out of context,
What?
wrong, or
I
just
don't believe
completely
it.
made up.
You
And
can't.
they had one Grand Master. He says, Grand Master at such and such communication said, Freemasonry is satanic. Well, I had the book where the Grand Master's speech was in it, and what the Grand Master said was, I would be telling a lie if I said that Freemasonry is satanic. So I took all this stuff and I brought it to the guy. And I said, let me show you. I said, the proof you have is not really proof. I said, and I showed him one by one by one. And I said, do you see that what you're saying as proof is wrong, and it's not so? And I was naive, because I thought he'd say, oh, geez.
Well, obviously, yes, he would immediately stop and correct the error of his ways.
He looked me right in the eye. He said, Jesus is my proof. And I said, I grew up Christian. Jesus never supported lies.
My Jesus is bigger than your Jesus.
And so there are some people who, no matter what you do, they're going to believe what they want to believe.
Unfortunately.
And that's just the way it is. And, if Freemasonry bends itself to the point that it tries to satisfy somebody who doesn't want to be satisfied, I think we have even more problems than we have now.
Yeah.
Well said.
Thought.
Well said. Because, Masonry as it is, it truly is an anachronism in today's society. Like, it really is the special thing that is out of modern context, out of, whatever the fad and trends of the day are, which is great, which is why we like it, which is why we try to adhere to the traditions of the fraternity. Because some of the lessons that we are taught are, these are things that transcend time and fads and all that. So, yeah, I would agree with you that if we did anything else to keep chipping away at what makes Freemasonry unique, then you are absolutely losing something on the threshing room floor. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
All right, well, let's start bringing it home for final thoughts. This has been such a lively discussion, but we will go to Jason first to start bringing us home. Jason, final thoughts on religious Masonic rituals.
So I think, me now, thinking about this now, vice where I was 12 years ago or 13 years ago when I was raised a Master Mason, I think are two completely and utterly different perspectives, because I was one of those people who was deeply uncomfortable praying in a room with people of other faiths. And I think that was in large part to how I viewed kind of my own faith structure in relation to everyone else. I think one of the things that is beautiful about this organization is the ecumenical nature of it and the idea that it is a brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God with an asterisk, you know, your God, your choice, essentially. And so there's something very, very beautiful in, abstracting away the dogma and really trying to put yourself on the same level of everyone else in the sense that we are all human beings who are reaching out to the divine and hoping that the divine is reaching back. And so when it comes to the inherent religiosity of Freemasonry, I think Freemasonry exists to help us reach out to the divine. And I think it is so, so critically important that, Freemasonry continues to enable its members to reach out to the divine, but never instills the dogmatic assertions that would be necessary in order for it to move from a religious organization to a religion, because then that rests the power away from the individual member to you know to be in charge of his own journey and his own relationship with his creator.
Very nice. Well said. Beautifully said. Brother Joe?
Man, everything that Jason said was so spot on and amazingly beautiful. I really dislike, and I know it's part of Virginia public ritual, but where we say that Freemasonry is not a religion, but it is religious. I don't like that. I think that we should distinguish the two between religion and spirituality, right? Because if someone comes to me and asks me if we're a religion, I would tell them, no, we're not. But we are, in fact, spiritual. And I know many people who have found, as Jason put it, that relationship with divinity through the lessons in the craft, more so than in other places. And if that helped them deepen their relationship with their creator, then that by its virtue will make them a better person and will make them a better person in their community and make the lives of those around them better. So I think, like I said, I can't add anything to what Jason said. That was absolutely beautiful and spot on.
But you did add to it, so thank you.
Shut your mouth.
I concur, and let me tell you why.
How about you, Brother Paul? Do you concur?
Well, I concur, yes. I also think that the problems we're having is education problems.
Ooh, say
if
more.
we go back to the time when these rituals were written, and that includes the ones that are not used anymore, people didn't have the cell phones or the computers or the TVs or the cars or any of these things. They sat around and talked and thought about things. They read books, they read things, and they didn't have the same distractions that we have now. And that's when they came up with a lot of these things that we're looking at now. And I think one of the major things that we have to do is start spending more time openly trying to understand the things that were written by others at a different time, and try to put yourself back in those times and try to understand what they were saying and what they meant and how can you apply it today. That's my thought.
I love it. And the best way, because again, you had me at education, right? That's really what this all comes down to. Because
Confirmation bias.
there is pure confirmation bias, and the best way to get Masonic education is to go to cornerstonepublishers.com, right? where Brother Paul is the proprietor of this. So again, you want to give a plug for your
Well,
bookstore here?
I started this publishing 30 years ago. And the reason I started it was because I would get books recommended and from, recommend you read these 10 books. And 8 or 9 of them were out of print and I couldn't get them. There wasn't an internet at that time. So I started going back and taking these old books and republishing them. And then they started growing. And I had written the first book I did was when I was 19, was published. And I began writing more Masonic books. And it's evolved since then. And I think we have a really good foundation for a brand new Mason or someone who's been around for years and years. And it doesn't matter if it's Masonic workings, the lodge functions, or the philosophy of Freemasonry. One of the most popular, the two of the books that are most popular are Robert's Rules of Order, Masonic edition. And that's the Masonic edition is the important part. And Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. We got so many of the classic books that we've made available and updated a lot of it, added forwards to them. So it's been a labor of love. And certainly it's not a labor for a lot of riches, because that's never come and it never will.
I mean, look at all those books behind you, man. Those aren't free.
Well, this is just a small section of them. This is just display. But it's get into work education programs, book clubs, group meetings where you get together, and that's how you grow with the stuff. Take the step and learn something. Don't just snack on a hot dog or spaghetti and talk with friends.
And call it Masonry. Yeah, well said. I totally agree. Brother Paul, it's been super amazing to have you back on. You're welcome on anytime you want to nerd out about something cool. And so, yes, we joked beforehand that some people thought there was a beef because we haven't had him on for 10 years, that we thought we didn't like Brother Paul anymore. Totally not true. Don't know where that came from. You know, the internet, they come up with these conspiracies.
It's always good to assume noble intent.
I'm going to assume the worst going forward.
People believe in Santa Claus, so I don't know what to say. Sometimes it's just somebody's wrong.
That's true. Awesome. Well, I guess in conclusion, I will definitely echo Mike the intern's comment here, because I had the same experience. That he says, my Masonic journey has helped me restore my faith in God in ways that religions could not. I came in pretty, the milquetoast kind of Christian, and when I got exposed to more belief systems, more esoteric aspects, I started doing more research. I was actually learning things that I would have not been exposed to in my faith trajectory at that time. And so Masonry has, because of the elements, the syncretic elements of religious symbols and iconography and ritual, it has certainly enhanced my faith. It's just been kind of icing on the cake, as it were, and hopefully made me a better person along the way. So awesome. Well, with that, I want to thank you all very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.